As every Tuesday, we are joined by Stan Deyo, and the last two Tuesdays over the holidays, New Year's Day and Christmas Day, or not Christmas Day, the day before the holidays, Stan was with family and unavailable to be on the show, and we did miss him. The listeners missed him as well. We have a pile of backup questions from the last 2 weeks as well as questions from this week, but it's great to have Stan back on the show. Welcome back, Stan.
Okay, I'm not sure I want to stay with all those questions. Goodness gracious.
Well,
where's the back door?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm looking for the under the covers too. But I got some good questions for you.
Alrighty.
More importantly, though, definitely I want to echo what Joe said. Glad to have you back. Missed you the last couple of Tuesdays, and so did our audience. In fact, some people just took their bats and balls and went home and said, "No, I'm not listening." And if it's not Stan, that's it.
Really?
Absolutely. So you're, and I just want to wish you the best for this year. I have a feeling it's going to be a rocky year, but I do want to wish you and Holly the best. We do, and all of the listeners as well. So,
I catch you, boy. It is going to be a difficult year, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I do think so. The third time is a charm. If I can, let me just start out by asking a question, because this question has been on the hook here for a while, and I'm going to ask this to you here. This is from Doug, my namesake, of course, or maybe I'm his namesake. But he writes this: hopefully with this. With the first regular week in a long time, Stan will be on, and yes, you are. His question is this, and we're not going to pull any punches here, given the nature of this question. He wants to know if Planet X, Nibiru, look, is it for real? Is it a false flag put on by the globalists to try to scare us much like the case of Y2K? And the 2112 end of the Mayan calendar catastrophe, which never happened. He writes, I got and viewed Bob Fletcher's DVD set on Nibiru. It's well done, but if Nibiru is reportedly five times the diameter of Earth, I think it would be greatly visible when it is opposite of the sun in the night sky, even if plane of orbit is 30 degrees off of Earth's orbit around the sun. And he says, thank you. And I'm not sure. Well, you're welcome.
Yeah, I guess he wants me to comment on that. As I've said repeatedly, I have not seen evidence of Planet X to my satisfaction being a real thing. I have done a calculation, in fact, a number of calculations in the past about Planet X, if it does exist, or if it's a dwarf star or whatever, if it has a 3,600-year orbital period, and if it's due back any time in the next, 7 to 10 years or whatever, where it would have to be and when it would be visible. And by my calculations, if such a thing were in existence, we should be able to determine it, even if it's viewing it from the southern hemisphere of the Earth, because the transit time inside the inner 5 planets is about 11 years total. So we're going to see it coming and going, which means it ought to be showing pretty soon, right now. In fact, should have been here already, I think, according to my calculations. But I'm still open to real data if we can find anybody, an astronomer or whatever else that can show changes, major changes in planetary orbits or moons of other planets, or things that indicate that something is just disturbing the orbits of the inner planets, even if you can't see it. It's got to get reasonably close to make gravitational differences to the Earth, United States, to the Earth and the Earth-Moon system. We would see it if it were that close. Even 5 million miles away, we would be able to see it. And the argument about the reflectivity of it is an interesting argument, saying that some people saying that the Planet X, or Nibiru, is a dark dwarf star emitting only infrared radiation out of the visible light range of telescopes, or normal telescopes. If that's the case, we should even be able to see stars blacking out by looking at areas of space with telescopes and seeing if a star winked out for, several hours or a day or so as something passed between that star and our telescopes. So even that says that with real light telescopes, not just infrared or heat seekers, we should be able to see something occluding or hiding star light. But that then presupposes that we know where to focus our cameras, or the cameras, the digital cameras and enhancers that are on optical telescopes. So anyway, I'm, as I said, I'm still open to real data on that, and all of the sources that I have in the amateur world, I've seen or heard nothing that proves one way or the other.
And I'm glad you answered that question. I defer to experts like you and others. Man, I tell you, I don't know what to make of anything, including Planet X, because we're lied to so often by so many. It just, I just don't know. And it's crazy. It really is.
Well, let me ask you, the guy that asked that question, if you knew that it was real and that it was going to suddenly appear and wipe out all life on the Earth or something, would it change what you do tomorrow? I mean, why not just live and prepare for various emergencies, like, Holly talks about in that Dare to Prepare book, or, just to fit out, I mean,
yeah, something like that. Yeah, we exactly. What can you do about something like this except just normal preparations, practical preparations? I totally agree. I agree with that. So, thanks, Dan. A voice of reason in the wilderness out there. I got to tell you. Well, perhaps maybe, Stan, rather than take away from your time, maybe you want to talk about things that are important to you first, and then we can get into the balance of the time with listener questions, or however you want to do it.
Well, maybe I can talk on a subject, and then we can have questions, and then go back to another subject. I mean, there's a number of things to talk about, but nothing that really leaps out other than, forecast by various experts on, what 2015 holds for us in the economy and the share market and things like that. But one of the things that I have been telling people to look out for is some exceptional changes in the sun. And certainly over the weekend, we did see that, in that NASA and NOAA pointed out that there was a huge hole in the coronal layer of the sun and the southern hemisphere of the sun. This is indicating to me that we are going to see some surprises from our sun, perhaps this year, which will start to lead us toward the fulfillment of some of the prophecies in the book of the Revelation of John in the Bible. So let's keep an eye on that. I mean, right now we've got another active region on the sun, 2253, with a 50% chance of M-class flares today. And I looked at the images off of the satellites, and sure enough, in the southern hemisphere of the sun, even though the center was blocked out, I could see a large flare coming out about 12 hours ago. It's probably not Earth-directed, and being an M-class, it probably wouldn't be fast enough or dense enough to get too excited about. But it was what we're seeing, the solar wind at about 430 miles, 300 and I'm just doing a calculation here, 2/3, 8. Yeah, right, at about 320 miles per second, with a minor proton density of about 10 per cubic centimeter. We're not worried about that now. I did see an interesting article on spaceweather.com today related to that, where one of the experts at spaceweather.com, Dr. Phillips, took a flight from Reno to Phoenix, and he brought on board the aircraft a pair of ionizing radiation detectors. And sure enough, he found that the dose of radiation you get at about 38,000 feet or so in an aircraft is 42 times higher than you get at ground level. And, and that's just normal solar activity and ultraviolet and X-ray and that kind of stuff. But when you have a solar flare or an X-ray flare, in essence, you are going to get much more than that as the light or the radiation from that X-class flare hits the upper atmosphere, if you're in the air at that altitude above the shield of the atmosphere. But in normal flying, just to put people's mind at rest, in normal flight, if you have exposure, say, for a 5-hour flight to this ionizing radiation from the sun and other places, it's about as bad as a dental X-ray, which is pretty heavy dosage to get through your skull, and for some of us, it's an extra dosage to get through the skull. But anyway, you can have a lot of dental X-rays every year without being worried about it. So he's just kind of telling you, in the norm, you do get more up there. They've proven it. But if we have other activity which increases the radiation hitting the Earth, then it could be danger for people flying on that particular day when the dose hits. And that's in addition to fears about, EMP, electromagnetic pulses from the sun, which would kill our grid. And an EMP from the sun, if it hit the Earth square on, could be as much as 100 to 400 times stronger than one generated by a nuclear bomb detonated up over the country and, at a couple hundred miles altitude. I mean, people worry about that, but worry more about the sun, and that's the gist of this whole discussion here, is what's happening on the sun. Keep looking at it. Go to spaceweather.com, go to soho.com, and keep an eye on that. It's important to watch.
Yeah, extra dose, what's SPF 1502.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, my. Well, yeah. Just one more thing to... Well, actually, no. I mean, as long as we're balanced about it and we look at it and we understand the nature of the threat. So, but signs definitely in the heavens, including, but not limited to the sun. Indeed, that's it's fascinating.
Look, I gave my daughter, who was over for Christmas from Australia on the west side, where they have a lot of sunny beaches. Christmas present to her was a solar ultraviolet radiation meter for her and the girls when they go out to swim, because I think it's going to be more important as time passes.
Would you recommend that for people here in the U.S. or anywhere? I mean, as crazy as that sounds.
Well, look, at higher altitudes where we are in Colorado, we don't have as much shielding from the atmosphere as people elsewhere. And so, yeah, I would suggest that this some sort of accurate ultraviolet meter would be useful, and particularly ones that can tell you what SPF you should use on that particular day.
Interesting. Okay, fair enough. All right. Well, that's interesting. All right, Joe. Well, we've got a question here from Angela. I'll pop in here, and Angela, and I believe, I'm not sure where she's from. I'm thinking that she might not be in the United States. But having said that, this for Angela. Been hearing a lot lately about CERN and the restarting of the Large Hadron Collider. Do you have any knowledge concerning its purpose or opinions about it? Thank you so much. And that's from Angela.
Well, yeah, she's probably, wondering about the possibility of a black hole being formed by the testing they're doing, and it would swallow up the Earth. And even though it could possibly, if worked as it wanted to, generate a minute black hole in the CERN as it was operating, I don't think that it would be long-lived because it has to absorb a number of other things. And I think in that case, I still wouldn't worry about the CERN. Let them go ahead and do what they're doing. I don't see anything in biblical prophecy that says the Earth gets swallowed up by, a black hole or something like that. And I believe that. I believe we're safe from that, but there's a lot of other things to be concerned about that are probable.
All right. That's good to know.
We have people that have emailed us asking in previous shows recently, and also there's a new article today. Scores of giant asteroids on course to hurl past Earth within months. NASA reveals. They say that almost 70 asteroids on the radar within 100 miles that are 100 miles wide are going to be whizzing by the Earth. And we know that this is nothing new. The asteroids fly by us all the time, but they're saying that there is a chance that there is a devastating consequences if one were to strike the planet. They don't specify if there is one in particular. They have a few that they say are possibilities. Have you seen anything that would warrant concern as far as any near-Earth object?
Yeah, and this is important to me, Stan, because my wife is making me wear a bicycle helmet outside everywhere I go. I'm not exactly sure
anyway.
Because of yeah, I was going to say, I think that she, you know.
But anyway. Are you leaving room for that aluminum foil pointy hat?
it slides over the aluminum foil.
Okay, that's good. Now, look, I know that I don't know why they put it in the press, but certainly a couple of days ago, a day or so ago, NASA listed a potentially dangerous asteroid to fly by our system, the Earth-Moon system, on the 26th of this month. But when you look at the details of it, even though it would be a nasty thing to hit us, are you there still?
Yeah, I'm here. I had a check.
The back's cropping out a bit. Hold on a second. I'm just going to try something here.
It's something, Joe. When he says, "Are you still there?" I have to look down to see if I'm still here. You know, and I'm here.
Okay. Are you there?
Yeah, we're here.
Okay, that's better. Is it? Yeah, I was getting dropouts for some reason, so I took my what do you call it? An equalizer out. Maybe that was doing it. I hope that was it.
Yeah, you're coming in 5x5 actually. So.
Okay, good. Anyway, the asteroid we're talking about it was discovered in 2004. It's asteroid number BL86, and it's estimated to be, about 300 yards in diameter, something like that, which is pretty big. And if that were to hit the Earth, it would cause really big problems. But it's really only going to pass about 700,000 miles away, which is about a little under 3 times the distance of the Earth to the Moon. So it's way outside of the Moon's orbit to us. Now, it could have attending fragments and junk that might spread out behind it after it's passed us on the 26th, and then we might see, like a month later or something, or during that month following, we might see some exceptional meteor shower flares, like shooting stars. But that's all I can see as an adjunct to what they're saying is a potentially hazardous asteroid. So I'm not worried about that one. I'm more worried about the one that we don't see or they don't see until it just comes smack right on to the Earth. And certainly the revelation of John does say that will happen, and it will be a significant one, probably assisting the solar flare that will occur at that time and killing off, a large segment of the human and animal population on the planet. So that we should be prepared for as best we can. And if you're in ground zero on that side of the planet when it hits, hey, you're not even going to know it. It's that quick.
You'll look up and bada bing, there you go. Is it your turn? I'll go. I love live radio. This from JD. JD sent this email early this morning for you, Stan. He writes this, and I can relate to this question because I want to know if I'm going nuts too. He writes, last night I left for work after dark, and as I was locking up, I looked west. For the second time, there was Orion tilted head down with its crooked belt straight up and down. Is this a normal occurrence that I've just missed for the last 50 years, or has something shifted?
I wondered about that myself the other night. I should have gone into Stellarium, the program that we use, and plotted to see where it should have been. But I even thought, at one of those days back there, the sun was rising too far south. But then, as I say, I haven't checked the data, and I'm not, a professional astronomer, so don't take anything serious about it. But it is something to keep watching, because I do expect that we will be seeing changes in the magnetic field and hence in the weather and various other things, which could also, by friction between the inner core of the Earth, which generates a magnetic field, and the outer surface of the Earth, it could generate a wobble in the surface of the Earth. But I haven't seen any, accurate data saying that is happening. So my suggestion would be, you'll see variations in the star patterns and the moon and the planets that you think might be unusual. So my suggestion is to get something like Stellarium for your computer and because you can dial into any date and time in there, and it'll show you the sky from where you're standing with your computer where you're sitting, so you can actually see whether it should be where it is. And what I tell people is, look, go get the stellarium. If you've already got it, don't get a new version of it. Lock off the internet so that you can be sure that it's not being updated by some internet access to it to change star patterns or positions. And that way then you can look at it and with, pretty much certainty say, okay, things are right or things are wrong. And I've done this a number of times now then when people have asked about things they've seen in Indonesia or in Israel. And it was just a peculiarity of the way planets and moons align at certain times in their orbits around the sun. So at this point, JD, let's defer to stellarium. I'll have a look at it later and see what we can find.
Thank you, sir. All righty. Joe?
All right. We've seen that there is a earthquake or two earthquakes in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And seismologists are investigating the source of these quakes, wondering if they are due to fracking or if they are natural occurrences. A 3.5 earthquake today hit Dallas, and they say that there's been a series of tremors that have rocked the Dallas area in the recent past, and they also say that they're investigating the source could be from an implosion of the Texas Stadium in 2010, which initiated these issues. Have you looked at any data or seen any?
Well, I saw the earthquake there and west of there as well, but I don't know about the implosion of the Texas Stadium. I mean, what was that caused by? It was a
demolition.
A nuclear event. Oh, no.
They just demolished
it. That wouldn't have been big enough to cause that size earthquake, no. Now, this is something else. This is geophysics or something of that nature. But if it detonated an atom bomb, a small yield bomb in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, you might see a 2.5 to 3 Richter earthquake. But this thing, whatever that implosion was not anywhere near that big, obviously. So this is something else. My first thought would be that it was somehow linked to the fracking up, in Oklahoma, northern Oklahoma and southern Kansas. Because if you look at the USGS plots of those areas, it's pretty busy up there. Let me just check and see. I'll pull it up. There's no links at the moment, no other smaller quakes that I can see between Oklahoma, northern Oklahoma, and Dallas, which might be fuel to say that if it's due to fracking, it's due to fracking in West Texas somewhere, or in the southern panhandle, I guess, would be more like it. But I don't see enough action there to give you anything definitive on that. I'd be more concerned about the fracking problems up in Oklahoma, and those two main centers they've got above Oklahoma City, because they are on the west end of a rather nondescript fault line that connects to the New Madrid Fault through Arkansas. And, in my opinion, the fracking, earthquakes that we see on the USGS map in northern Oklahoma are very busy. The last 30 days, I don't know how many there are, but there's been a lot.
Okay.
You can look at it on USGS, but there's some things that we just, I can't answer. It's like having a crystal ball to get the answer out.
Well, we'll have to get you a crystal ball.
Yeah. Well, keep an eye on the Juan de Fuca plate over northern California offshore, where the Oregon and California border join. What does today say? This is the 6th. Right. Okay. On New Year's Eve, looks like there was a Richter 5.4 at the Juan de Fuca foot, which is interesting in that around that same time there was a 5.2 the next day on the top end of the Juan de Fuca plate. And again, as I say, you go to USGS and have a look at that. And we watch that plate very closely because the failure of that plate, which is overdue, could produce a Richter 9+ earthquake on the Washington or Oregon or California coastlines from Eureka up to the SeaTac area. So keep an eye on that if you watch earthquakes on USGS. And if we see more of these in the next month or so, or even less, that are well, on the diagonal line of the heading toward what we call the foot of the Juan de Fuca plate, then you can be concerned, because I know there are a bunch of smoker or suboceanic floor heat vents, smokers, and a volcanic field there as well. That tells me that's where the weakness really is. So for the past month, that's been kind of calm in that area, but it's the head and the toe of the Juan de Fuca plate that shows something is stressing there.
Okay. All right. We do have William R. asking about Northern California City, a division of a big quake along I-5, and it took out the power grid. Not really a question, just a comment. I'll just leave it at that.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I do know that I've seen years ago in a dream vision of volcanoes from Mount St. Helens all the way down to Mexico City, maybe 6 to 8 volcanoes all erupting at the same time in a manner that would be breaking off the west coast of the United States into islands. So it hasn't happened yet, but it was so real. And the things I saw were things I hadn't thought about at the time, like cars slipping off of the highways when they were trying to get further west over the mountains to get to safety over, in Idaho or Colorado, whatever, Nevada. And the ash coming from these volcanoes was moist. And they put moist ash on the roads, and people were sliding off into canyons and stuff when they would go around the corner. No traction in it, and they were dying that way. So, to me, that was pretty significant in that, I thought, wow, I'd never thought of that, but I saw it in the dream vision. So,
that's pretty interesting. Oh.
Yep.
Yeah, as if insurance claims are hard now. Just kidding. All right.
The coronal hole that's been at the bottom of the sun, a lot of people have been talking about this, and the solar wind or whatever it is that is being projected out of that coronal hole. It looks to be much smaller now, but did you see maybe 4 days ago how it seemed to engulf the whole bottom of the sun?
Even now, it's let's see, it'd be about, in the southern hemisphere, it would equal about 30% of the southern hemisphere toward the southern pole of the sun is dark, and you can see that in probably 4 spectral shots there in the extreme ultraviolet telescope. 304, 284, 195, yeah, all of those show it still today. And as I talked about, I guess 3 shows back now, the difference in the magnetic field structure of the sun between now and 13 years ago shows that something unusual is happening on the sun. This solar cycle is producing a pattern that is visually quite obvious. If you go to the Show Images page on standeyo.com and click on the little microphone or underneath it there where it says Show Images for today, you'll see in the top row, very middle, the change in the solar output over the last 12 years. And if you click on it, it's an animated picture. It'll click from 12 years ago, which would be bright, to now. And it wasn't just one day's photograph that produced this December 2nd photograph that I put up there. It gradually got worse and worse over years. Over the last 12 years, I went back and searched through every year, watching the images of the sun taken in this particular wavelength. And it does show us that there is something unusual happening, and even in the 2nd of December of 2014, just a month or so ago, you can see that coronal hole is starting to form then in that image. So if you look at it, you'll see that.
Yeah.
The sun is definitely going to be you see what I'm saying? And the Bible tells us it's going to be a major factor in the judgments of the revelation on the earth. So for that to happen, the sun has got to do something unusual, and it has been ramping up for that over the last 12 years.
Interesting. What correlation is there between these massive coronal holes and sun and solar flares? You talked about earlier I think it was 12253, the sunspot. That seems to be just a little bit northeast of the coronal hole. Do these coronal holes have a impact on the solar flares?
Well, I'm sure they're related to it. Normally the flares occur along boundary lines, like wave fronts that sweep across the surface of the sun. And that coronal hole, I would expect them to occur on the boundaries of that, and probably on the side of that coronal hole that's closer to the equator of the sun. That seems to be where things break out, and you could attribute that perhaps to the centrifugal force being greater around the equatorial regions of the sun as it spins, and adding that to the magnetic filaments that rotate and flip around in there and form magnetic storms on the sun, that if you do get a thinning of the coronal layer, that outlining it on the top edges of that toward the equator will produce the flares. And that's not good, because that's more Earth directed. Sadly, that's just the way it is. You see more of them in the semi-equatorial regions than you do in the polar regions. And with a black hole there forming, which is just a temperature difference, it is sending out radiation more toward the southern part of our orbit, so it doesn't really directly hit us. So anyway, that's all I wanted to show on that. It's rather interesting.
All right.
Is it my turn or your turn?
Oh, go ahead.
No, just tell me. I'm just trying to figure out whether to proceed.
Yeah, you can go ahead and get into anything.
Okay, now, we're talking all these things here about space and astronomy. I ran across something here the other day. Someone sent me a link and said, "What do you think about this?" And I thought, well, okay, about what? And I clicked on the link, and up comes this article that NASA's engineer Harold White had been working on a warp engine. I remembered I'd read about it, but I didn't realize that they'd already discussed the construction of a ship that would go warp speed. And if you go to that link that's on the, let me just see here, show images, up in the top row on the right, it says NASA's new warp drive. If you click on that, there'll be links to 5 pictures, and one in the middle at the bottom says to read about, takes you to the article about NASA's new faster-than-light drive concept. They've actually paid a guy over in Europe to image in 3D the new Enterprise, the IXS Enterprise warp drive. What I find amazing about this is that in one of the papers in fact, several papers, and the book, The Cosmic Conspiracy, I wrote years ago about the reason that we can go faster than the speed of light in space. And in doing so, the design would have to use a donut or toroid shape to curve space in front of the craft and then compress space back behind the craft so you can scoot on through. Now, if you look at the photos that NASA's ship, they may come out, and which they do, they give you some really heavy-duty mathematics as to why space-time curves, and the method of propulsion has to incorporate this space-time curve before and after the ship, and pretty soon you're lost in all the stuff they're talking about. But in the Cosmic Conspiracy, I showed there was an error in Einstein's relativity based on the Michelson-Morley experiment and the results they got about that, about the nature of space, the fluidity of space. Now then, to get down to just very brass tacks about it, let's say that you're wanting to drag some boat or dock or something across a pond fast. And so you start to pull it on a rope, and you'll notice ahead of the large object of the dock or the boat or whatever you're pulling, that there will be a bow wave. It'll push the water up ahead of the boat, and then it'll slide off on the sides of the boat and then close around it to form that wake trail that's there for days or whatever. Now, that tells you that when you move something through a fluid, it'll pile up stuff ahead of your travel, and what you don't see, unless you do the thing in a mathematical interpretation of it, what you don't see is that when you shove something through a fluid, not only do you have directions of motion in the water that go out to the sides, but when it goes ahead of you, some of it curls back into your pathway, so that the faster you go, the harder the water seems because of the energy that's transferred around to the front of the boat as well as to the sides. So when Einstein used the analogy from the Michelson-Morley light experiment, and they decided there was no fluid space, it was a mistake. But that's what the mathematicians Lorentz and Fitzgerald took, and then they made an equation that balanced what we thought was fluid space with this equation, and Einstein jumped on that and formed relativity. And so everybody has been saying you can't go faster than the speed of light because that's the speed is in the fluid of space or the space-time field. You can't go faster than that. Therefore, we're just doomed. Then they try to figure out with this new drive I'm looking at here, how do we warp space? Well, wait a minute. If you warp space, you're going to generate a bubble around you. And it's going to be, in this case, like 2 donuts that encompass your craft. And that's going to allow that donut and the fluid of space that you trap in it to move a lot faster than the speed of light. Why? Because doing it that way, you're not just pushing through space at all. You are creating a hole by breaststroking at high speed in space ahead of you. These invisible parts of your field go out in front of the ship and scoop the space around to the back of the ship to form a pressure area, just like you do if you were breaststroking in the water. You can do it a lot better that way since you're not pushing your way through space. You are being accepted through space. In that respect, then, you can go many times the speed of light, and it makes the universe a lot smaller than we thought.
I've got 2 questions related to that. All right. Let me see how to put these questions. All right. If let's see here. Hang on just 1 second here. Stand by. So yeah, if you're in a car and you're traveling at the speed of the lights, would your headlights work? Would your headlights illuminate the way?
Well,
and what's the speed of dark? But anyway.
If you use Einstein's field equations, the thing is that as you approach the speed of light, your vehicle would start to flatten out because it's going to meet an infinite resistance to travel, and the light would bend and flatten as well and wouldn't go anywhere. But that's one of the things in relativity that just didn't work right. When you build a mathematical model of something, you build it based on certain things you accept as true. And until you can then test that theory or hypothesis on all kinds of variations within your model, you're not sure that it's perfect for everything. It's missing parts. And relativity is missing parts because even Einstein found that there were some problems he could solve in his mathematical representation of reality. But when he tried to bring those solutions to problems back through the mathematical gateway into the real world that we live in, he couldn't do it. The mathematics would not allow him to do it. There was a plug there, if you wish, and it was simply because the mathematical model he built did not incorporate everything, the theory of everything. And of course, that's the physicist's dream is to find the true theory of everything, the TOE theory. But anyway, as far as the light in your car, it presupposes a lot of things. As an example, that you're in an atmosphere and you're on the Earth, and you're not traveling in space. If you get in space, you have no atmosphere, and you shine the light out ahead of you. But if you start to go the speed of light, then the light is just going to be there on the interface surface where the bulb in your car is, on your headlights. It wouldn't go back. But to exceed the speed of light with your car, you would have to have that bubble around you, and therefore the light would shine out of your car headlights to the edge of that bubble, which you're inside of, and nobody outside the bubble would see it because you're moving it faster than light.
Gotcha.
Boy, what a question.
Well, actually, if you want to know the truth of it, comedian Stephen Wright, that was one of his introspective sayings or questions to a mind-numbed audience.
Well, Einstein did that himself. He was famous for making those things about riding on a train, and if you're shooting the light this way and that way with the direct train or against it, an elevator falling, would it be the same as gravity and falling, and all these kind of situations. He used those examples to tease his own mind to figure out what he had to answer.
Well, you bring up a good point, and I should know this from perhaps high school physics or whatever, but seriously, you're falling in an elevator, and if you jump before it hits the ground, is it going to make a difference?
Not much.
Okay, I didn't think so. Yeah, I should have paid more attention in high school.
Look, you're going to have to push against the floor of the elevator when you leap, and so that will possibly add speed to the elevator itself. But if the elevator has braking systems or frictional drag on it, it may not accelerate the downward progression of the elevator as much as to equal what your opposite direction vector is when you leap up inside the elevator upward. So it would make a minor difference to it, but not enough to save you, I don't think.
Just prepare to get hurt. Prepare to say ouch, depending on what flight you're falling from.
Well, if I had to do it, I'd lay down on my side and put my arm under my head and neck and hope for the best. That's, so you don't break your neck or legs straight out. Reduce the compression on your body from a vertical position by laying in a horizontal position and protecting your neck.
You know what? That's actually, seriously, folks, that's actually good advice and useful advice. Not that you're going to be finding yourself falling in an elevator, but bracing for any kind of impact, fall kind of thing. Even falling, falling from a standing position. You're going to want to obviously fall, or instead of falling on your head, it does make sense to mitigate the bodily damage by spreading yourself out a little bit more.
There was years ago, back in I think it was the late 50s, there was an Air Force sergeant on a flight over the Rockies here somewhere, piney wood type things, and he got blown out of his aircraft. It was like one of those transports, and the back door was opening, and he was blown out, and he had no chute or anything, and of course he thought he was dead. But because his aerodynamics were such, he level flew instead of feet first. He spread out and he flew like sideways, like a plane would. And the winds and storm around him, it carried him into a field of pine trees. And he didn't fall straight down on them. He fell at an angle, which allowed him to slow his fall, his impact speed by passing through the pine trees at the top level where the pine branches were softer and thinner than down at the bottom. He lived through it, and he had, of course, pine needles stuck through him, but he did live through it by distributing the impact over a greater surface area rather than at the head level or whatever. You see what I'm saying? Same kind of.
Yeah, and it makes sense. It really does. I'm not going to do it. Well, I'll say this. I was investigating a workers' comp injury that was rather suspicious. A man actually was impaled by a fence post. He fell from a tree and fell and impaled. He was impaled by this fence post, and miraculously, actually, however he did it. And they took the fence post and all. They took him to the hospital. But having said that, there was no major damage to his internal organs. It just went just right through him. Obviously he was in pain, hospitalized for a number of, I think, a couple of weeks. But he was back to work. Now he did earn, and I'm being very serious about this. No disrespect. His first name was Bob, and people called him Shish Kebab. Okay, and that's a true story. That is a true story. But having said that, it was just amazing to see. It was, wow. But anyway, all right.
Yeah, well, that was a bit of good luck for him. It reminds me of the true story of a guy that was a mining worker, probably in the late 1800s, and where they drilled long, deep holes to hold dynamite sticks in the rock formations of what they were going to mine. And these guys would take these steel poles and tamp, the dynamite sticks into the hole that they dug in the rock. And they would do this over a certain pattern and put the detonators in them. And then when they'd gotten down to the ground off the ladders and everything, with ropes, they would blow the side of a mountain out, and they would pick it up and mine it and that kind of stuff. Well, this particular guy was up tamping the dynamite sticks into the hole that had been dug, and it detonated, and it blew that iron rod, which was probably 4, 5, 6 foot long, somewhere in that region, straight into his head, right through, I think it was, just trying to think where his head was turned sideways or what, but it went straight through his head, near the hairline and out the other side. And he, picked himself all off the ground because it blew him off the rope as well. And he had a headache and, didn't bleed much. For some reason or other, it sealed up. And so later on, the headache got worse as we went to the doctor and found out he had a hole right through his head. And about the only thing that it did to him in later years was it made him better at mathematics and lousy at other things that normal people would do, and as far as cognitive functions or whatever. But he functioned with a hole right through his brain like that.
That's amazing.
So, it is. Wow. Peter Stein just picked up the article years ago, and I remember reading it, and I thought, boy, it just was luck for that guy that day.
Oh yeah, that's exactly. Man, that's crazy.
Have you been watching the Dow Jones this year?
Yes. Yeah, what do you think of what's going on with this? The volatility behind it. Well, the rise ultimately, but it's somewhat volatile. But
well, it'll go up and down, up and down. The question is whether the median change, of the curve, the average curve, will continue to descend. It's obviously dropped 2.5% in the last week, like 700 points, and which is 700 points going back probably 2 or 3 weeks, but still it's dropping. And there are a lot of analysts trying to figure out this is the beginning of the bull market bubble bursting. So, things are quite volatile in the rest of the world, which link to us. Oil price, the volatility in Russia. I mean, people in Russia aren't exactly happy with Putin at the moment. All to do with financial matters, and the Russian ruble is, of course, I think it's. Let me think here. Ruble. Let me just get. Okay. Last year, over the whole period and gaining velocity toward the end of the year, the ruble dropped down about 40% against the U.S. dollar, which is making them unhappy at a consumer level in Russia. The Middle East instability is forcing Russia, or Putin in particular, to look at honoring contracts for defense down there in the Middle East, costing money. And the United States, well, I don't know if he's that worried about us at the moment, because he's got a man in the White House that seems to be doing everything that Putin would have him do. So that with China's economy, with a lot of real estate that's not occupied at the moment, you got to wonder if this is the year that the economy globally tanks and forces us into a need for clear heads and a one world digital money thing. And to that end, you've got to wonder, will your paper dollars you've stuffed under the mattress be worth anything? Will the dollars you've got in your bank account even be available to you when the banks are told to lock them down? Gold and silver, will it be legal to trade with them, or will you go to jail for that? So what do? I mean, even if you store things like food and medicine and stuff like that, you run the risk of, if anybody knows, when the powers that be here and worldwide say, look, anybody that's hoarding food and stuff is, a criminal. We'll give you 10% of it. Say, we'll give you 10% of it if you'll put the ID on your neighbor, whoever's done that. So what I'm getting to is it's important to prepare, but it's also important to do it quietly and to hide it away in a place that's not obvious. Because the things that you can get with your money now that will keep are going to be the things that people will kill for later, that will have more value than gold, silver, paper money, or digital currency. So you still need to do it.
Yeah. Okay. When you say things that'll keep, obviously you mean water and food. Yeah, to the extent that you can have it without drawing attention, well, any physical, anything of value. Because if I had a bunch of money stuffed under my mattress, which, folks, I don't. Okay, but if I did, yeah, really. I guess my biggest fear would be the value of that money. I mean, it could just end up being mattress stuffing, essentially. I mean, it could lose all its value. It's just paper, and you're right. So you would obviously say put that money into what? Into just practical things, land.
To some degree, yes, but even that you will be challenged on if you can't pay land taxes. You'll have to pay the new digital stuff, but it turns you into a gypsy. But even gypsies have hidey holes around, national property and forests and parks and things like that. You can bury stuff. If you've got friends that own property or where your name's not on the deed, maybe you can go there. I still think that public lands are probably wiser.
Right.
There's no record of you being there. You have to go into to the land itself through trails and find a way to secrete your stuff away into a cave or a hole you dig or some kind of a protective structure. But food, water, medicine. I mean, Holly details all this in the Dare to Prepare book. It's the only things you kind of add to the advice in the book is where to store it and how to do it quietly. And certainly we've met a number of people with interesting solutions here in Colorado, and they're doing that. Obviously, I'm not going to sit here and talk about some of them, but the public lands issue is really quite clever.
Are you finding, Stan, and folks, yes, as I mentioned last hour, Dare to Prepare, Holly Dale, a must for your library, and a must for these times, not just for your library, but these times. Are you meeting more and more people, Stan, that are becoming awakened to the severity of our times? Just kind of a curious statement after the holidays, but.
Well, before the holidays, when we were mixing with people and talking to them more than we have been the last week, I did see that there was a tendency for more of them to take a bite of the red pill, like in the Matrix, to see reality rather than wander off in dreamland without realizing what was happening to them. Take the red pill and open your eyes, and I think a number of people are starting to do that. I hope they don't take too long to make their preparations, though, because it's a finite window.
One last question, Stan, here as we come to the end of the hour. I came across this article on the day after Christmas. Fukushima radiation, U.S. West Coast will likely see peak by end of 2015. They say at its peak, levels of radioactive cesium-137 will, they say safe levels, will, as a byproduct from the Fukushima disaster, will start to see their peak in the United States on the West Coast. We've talked about Fukushima a lot in the past. This happened in March of 2011. What would take so long for the cesium-137 and other radioactive particles to get here in 2015 rather than, just contaminating pretty much the whole Pacific with their dumping of radioactive water back into the ocean and the release of the radioactive toxins since March of 2011?
Joe, you were breaking up, and I was losing part of your question. Give me a one-sentence summary of it once again.
They say cesium-137 will peak on the U.S. West Coast in 2015.
Yeah. Okay.
And,
all right. And
my question is, from the initial release in 2011, why would this take so long, and does this ring true to what you know?
Oh, boy. It is possible. It is definitely possible that it would take that long, and even longer in some cases. But it depends upon the prevailing winds, the release to atmosphere of the cesium over in Japan. If that is now not being released or as much as it has been in the past, if they've got a handle on that, that would explain why they would expect the cesium level to drop. I'm really more concerned with the number of nuclear plants we have here that are at threat on fault lines, known fault lines, and the increase in earthquake activity across the planet, full stop. If we lose one or more major nuclear reactors in this country and get a meltdown, that's going to be real close to home, and it's going to pollute a lot of the United States. And certainly, if it happens in California, that's a lot of our food supply.
Okay. It seems strange to me that it would take so long for the radiation and different particles of radiation to come over to the West Coast, but with such a huge disaster happening so long ago, who knows what has been circulating in the water and in the atmosphere, and the fish continue to die and be poisoned in the Pacific Ocean, and yet we still have no contamination, from what I understand, of Fukushima.
Well, look, I'm sure there are factors at play that we're not aware of, the public anyway, that might affect the rate at which the cesium pollution has hit the United States. Certainly, I would have hoped that there would be some technologies that we had at the government level that would allow them to mitigate some of the radiation spread, perhaps without telling everybody about it for obvious reasons, but maybe that explains why it's slowed down what we thought was going to be an instant problem. I don't know.
Very interesting. You're not saying, though, and when I was listening to Joe ask that question, I immediately thought of like the fish and the bottom feeders in the Pacific and such. They still took a big hit, right? I mean.
Oh yeah.
Okay. All right. It's just that when I was kind of thinking through that as you were talking, and I just want to make sure that really the other part of that question too I had, is it more or only the Northern Hemisphere, or is it concentrated in the Northern Hemisphere, the whole Pacific is affected, or the whole of, is everything affected, or is it, and just concentrations are greater in certain areas, or is everything equally dispersed? And that might sound like a pretty academic or basic question, but I'm just curious about this, thinking through this.
Well, eventually, the things that happen in the Northern Hemisphere in the air and in the water will cross the equatorial boundaries between the Northern and Southern Hemisphere, but not as rapidly as direct distribution through ocean currents in either hemisphere, or, in the atmosphere as well, either hemisphere. At higher levels, there's more mixing in the atmosphere, but I don't know whether the radiation particles would have gone that high. You get extremely high-speed winds, so the higher you go up to a certain point, and then nothing at all when you get to the edge of space, or, between us and the moon or whatever. But
gotcha.
There's just so many variables, Doug. I finally just gave up trying to figure it out myself. I thought, right, there's so many things that we don't have data on at a consumer level here. We'll just have to go with the flow. I mean, what are you going to do, stop eating,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I have a tendency to overanalyze certain things, and I guess at this point, it's really, at this point, we're how many years into this now, at least with Fukushima. Okay.
Well, cesium-134, which is, and I think, 137, both of those have relatively short half-lives. I mean, cesium-134 will cut the amount of it that's being in existence, will diminish 50% in 2 years, has a half-life of 2 years. Whereas some of the other isotopes of cesium, like 136, has a half-life of only 13 days. Or cesium-137, which was mentioned, it does have a half-life of 30 years. So it takes 30 years for half of the stuff that's floating around to die off and become, ineffective as far as emitting gamma radiation. But, if it's in an area where it's not hitting our food chain and it's not really hitting us directly, which I don't know the answer to that, then...
Okay. Yeah, I got you. And just a follow-up last question. Have you heard anything about a nuclear reactor in Ukraine emitting radiation or having some sort of an issue in Ukraine? Nuclear reactor?
No, I haven't, but it's the holiday season. I've been a bit distracted.
No, I've got a couple of emails on that. I haven't seen anything in the mainstream media on this, and I haven't really seen anything definitive on this. However, I've been told to look by a number of people, told to look at the Ukraine.
Well, I don't know Do you remember Major Ed Dames that used to be on the Coast to Coast with our
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, he moved to Ukraine, married a woman over there. And, I would think that if it were something that he could get out as a news source, he would do that to tell us. Because he always seemed to be able to.
Oh, I didn't know he was living over there. My goodness. Okay.
Yeah, I haven't heard from him in a while, but that was, would be my first thought was to see, if he said anything or if it's leaked out through his sources. Since he still lived there, it'd probably be rather dangerous to say much, but oh, Lord, who knows?
Indeed. Well, Stan, I want to thank you so much. We want to thank you so much for your time this evening. My goodness. Boy, rough night back. A lot of questions from people wanting to get your take on things. So.
Well, I wish I could have been more informative on some of those, but they're just some of them that's just almost impossible to get trustworthy information on.
No, I get that. I get that. Absolutely. I'm just looking through here just very quickly. We talked about CERN
all right,
here.
Go ahead.
Tamara was talking about CERN. CERN, have you heard about the increase in the magnet strength of the Hadron Collider in CERN? And that is being restarted. We touched on that. The magnetic field is generating, is 150 times stronger than the magnetic field around the Earth. They are saying that this will open more portals to other dimensions, which means ultimately more demonic activity. Could this be part of the upcoming?
That's different now. That's different. I think I jumped the gun on answering that, talking about black holes, but I do think that portals, or a portal spoken of in the book of the Revelation, John, may well open up and allow beings from a lower energy density universe, like in our minds it would be like from below, to open up like a pit and let these entities through. Now, whether the CERN function does that or not is another issue, and the fact that it's a circular field is kind of interesting too, like a outline of a portal. Anyway, I don't know. These are uncharted waters for us.
Very good, sir. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for your time tonight, and thank you for being with us. And
well, thank you for the couple of weeks off. I did enjoy it.
I'm glad. So you had family from Australia up here.
Oh, yeah. I had two granddaughters I'd never met and a son-in-law I'd never met, and we had a great time. They spent Christmas Eve here, and the reindeer actually came into our kitchen and left pine needle footprints and stuff and pine cones next to the water and carrots they were eating, while Santa Claus was in the other room, eating some of his cookies and a bit of the milk. So we had a great time with the granddaughters discovering all this.
Wow. Is that their first time in the U.S.?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Just curious, how long of a flight is that? I'm just curious.
Well, with the layovers and stuff, it's just under 24 hours.
Wow.
You leave Australia and you fly over to Dubai, and then you have a transfer of planes, and then you fly from there over to over Europe and then over into Dallas where they landed. But, the actual flight time might only be about 15, 16 hours, but with the layovers and, transfer of planes and flight schedules, you can expect to be on the go for 24 hours. So,
man, wow.
Can you imagine with two little kids at 8,
No.
4, and 6? I mean,
oh
boy, it must be a trial.
I got to tell you, you should imagine with two little kids, and Joe being one of those little kids at 6 years old or 4 years old. My goodness.
Oh, yeah.
He was a terror, yeah.
Did he give you a funny look now?
Yeah, now he is. Thanks, Dan. All right, brother. Thanks. Give our best to Holly in God bless you.
Good.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stan.
All right. Folks, that was Stan Deyo, StanDeyo.com, and definitely, seriously, Dare to Prepare is one of the best resources ever. You got to get it. You really do. Just go ahead, because you're going to be looking for it in mid-2015 or maybe, if we're lucky, late 2015, but it's a great resource. Dare to Prepare at StanDeyo.com. Click on the, you can find it, click on the book section there, and definitely a great buy. Folks, you're listening to a Tuesday edition, January 6th, 2015, We're going to be right back after these. Stay with us, please. On the other side, your phone call, 661-244-9839, 661-244-9839. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to hour number 3 of the Hagman Report. I'm Doug Hagman in studio with my son, fellow investigator, co-host Joe Hagman. Together, we are the Hagman Report. I want to thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Thank you for your belief and your trust in us. I want to mention this, too. Tomorrow night, we're going to have Steve Quayle and Tom Horn. Don't forget, mark your calendars, tell a friend, tell a Mundo, tell whatever, I don't know. But definitely get the word out. Tomorrow night, Steve Quayle, Tom Horn. Thursday, Dan Duvall is going to be on with us as well. It's going to be a 2 back-to-back, incredibly important broadcasts. And Stan, thank you so much, Stan, for tonight, and Holly. God bless you both. But have you noticed the passe aspect of the royal sex scandal? Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jeff Epstein, the convicted pedophile, Jeffrey Epstein, of course, he's close friends with Bill Clinton. There was a little shot in the Daily Beast about Epstein's society friends closing ranks. Despite the pedophile mogul's conviction for soliciting underage prostitution, well, his friends are standing by their man. Even the scientist whose research Epstein funded also backed the billionaire. And the article in the Daily Beast references the evening of December 2nd, 2010, when a handful of America's media and entertainment elite, you don't think that this stuff is so incestuous? I mean, listen to this. The TV anchors Katie Couric, George Stephanopoulos, comedian Chelsea Handler, whoever that is, I don't know, director Woody Allen, go figure. Boy, what a surprise that is. Convened around the dinner table of convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. It wasn't just any dining room, but it was part of a large 9-story townhouse that once housed an entire preparatory school. Oh, the irony. Yeah, and of course it was the enigmatic billionaire who had once flown the likes of former U.S. President Bill Clinton, former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak, around the world in his own Boeing 727. Yeah. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'll just say this, okay? The level of immorality, the level of debauchery, the level of satanic goings-on, the level of pedophilia, child slave trafficking. Now, I'm not saying that these people are involved in that. The stuff that you see when you dig down deep into these power brokers, these real satanic idiots out there that are involved in the satanic stuff, the more sick to your stomach you'll get. And I would contend the real belly of the beast of the satanic is within the halls or the walls of the city of London, including the royal family and everyone associated with them, at least on a societal level. And then you get into the power centers in Rome and the power center in D.C. and, of course, all throughout Europe, how they look at things. This is just an incredible story. I do believe that with this story, you're going to find accounts of rape, obviously, sex trafficking, obviously.
Kidnapping,
yep. Murder. Yes, murder, absolutely. Child. And we talk so very cavalier-like about these activities. But isn't this the, how can I put this? Isn't this not proof, but an illustration of the depravity of these clubs like the Bohemian Grove? I mean, come on. It's amazing. People will scoff and laugh and say, it's just a bunch of, hoo-ha stuff going on there at the the Bohemian Grove. It's just a bunch of guys getting together, people getting together to a little club. Well, wait a minute. Hold on a second. So when have you, any listener to this show, when have you attended one of those ceremonies? Really? I mean, you haven't, right? Obviously not.
And, this has been going on for hundreds and hundreds of years. These types of behavior that are just so horrific. The interesting thing about what we see today is that they are coming to light. Things that these elites have been able to keep secret due to their control of the media, whether it's in print, radio, or TV. Something's changing where this is now coming out in the open. Either they're not wanting to hide it so much anymore, or they are unable to stop the release of some of this information.
And this brings me to what Paul McGuire has often talked about. You go back in time and you look at, for example, the movie Rosemary's Baby. Roman Polanski associated with Rosemary's Baby, the Dakota building in New York. And, people have a lot of people have a tendency to blow this stuff off and say, it's just the lifestyles of the rich and perverted or whatever. Well, no, there's more to it than that. 32 years or 5 years, I don't know. It's been a while, 30-some years, over 30 years since Roman Polanski fled the United States, of course, because he was facing, he became a fugitive because he was facing charges here in the United States. Yeah, thank you. My mind locked up there. It's the subject material, obviously, but and look at the treatment that Polanski got. I would have to say that his status as a celebrity, he obviously ended up, there was preferential treatment granted by the authorities to him. Some will argue the alternative, saying no. If he had been just a nobody, they would have just looked the other way. Well, no. I do believe. I just pulled it up here. In 1977, Polanski pleaded guilty to one count of unlawful sexual intercourse with a 13-year-old girl. But because he fled the country before sentencing, the remaining charges were still pending. And anyway, that's his story. But there is more, folks, much more to this story. Much more to this than we are being told. This has Satanism, satanic aspects of it written all over this. Later this week, perhaps on Friday, we'll get into that in greater detail. The more I find, the more I look, the more I find, and the more I find, the more interesting and perverted and twisted this gets. So, and it does speak to, or it does go back to what Paul McGuire talked about as well. So that's that, and of course, I'll just mention this in closing and push it back over to Joe. It doesn't take very long. Politics as usual, and I'm sure tomorrow the mainstream media, the talkers behind the mics are going to be lamenting. Oh my goodness, John Bonnier, he's back and he's leading the charge now, right, as the majority leader. And he's taking revenge, or has already taken revenge on at least two of his political puppets, himself a puppet. But did you expect anything less? Do you think that, as Steve Quayle says, there are no political solutions to spiritual problems, and this is a big spiritual problem? Folks, we are really in for the long haul here with respect to immigration, illegal immigration amnesty, that is Obamacare. And I do contend, and I'll just say this in closing, I contend that if the morons who rejected out of hand the issue of Barack Hussein Obama, Barry Soetoro's eligibility would have listened in the first place, we would not necessarily be in this mess where we are today at this moment in time. And they, you know, the birthers, the truthers, all of the pejorative names that we are called. Shame on you people, not you listeners, but shame on the people who are kowtowing to the
sweeping this under the rug.
Right, right. And, you know, I do have some righteous anger, I believe, about this, because it's all right there. And I'm going to tell you right now, Obama would not even qualify to be a dog catcher for a Fortune 100 company based on my research into his qualifications. Look, I've done background investigations for Fortune 100 companies for board members and for executives. And I'll tell you, it wouldn't... No, wouldn't have flown at all. Would not fly. He would not have gotten away with this. None of it. And yet our Congress, and I'm nobody. I mean, really, okay? I'm nobody. Oh, my gosh, I'll tell you. I'm riled up. All right.
All right, we can take calls, but let's hit a few pieces of news, and then we'll take some calls here in just a few short moments. Some new economic figures have been released today. Under Obama, the federal debt has increased $84,000 per full-time worker in the private sector, but it gets worse. The federal government, here we go. The federal government dove, are you ready for this? I'm going to make sure I get this right. Let's see, million.
7 gazillion. No,
789 billion. No, it has to be trillion, yeah.
No, it's 7.5 trillion.
7.5 trillion.
7.89. Well, whatever. It's over 7 trillion.
Yeah. Under Obama, the debt has increased, we'll say, $7.5 trillion. And I know all of you remember the constant barrage of people inside the media, TV media complex stating how, well, Obama's cut the deficit in half in his time. I know Pelosi's been one of those. But yeah, under Obama, $7.5 trillion increase in national debt. The debt already unsustainable to pay back anyway. So why not just pile on, right? Just keep piling on.
Well, you know, willing or not, ready or not, decidedly, we are all involved in an all-out, drag-out, no-holds-barred, three-way, and I say three-way, global competition. You know, most of us, at least most of the people out there walking like zombified people or zombies, we're not competitors. We are the stakes. We are what is at stake for the competition is about who will establish the first one world system of government that has ever existed in the society of nations, at least in modern times. It's about who will hold and wield the dual power of authority and control over each of us, individually and collectively, over the entire population of the planet. The competitors, well, the competition anyway, is all out because now that it has begun, whatever moment in time you choose to select as when it began, well, now that it's started, there's no way it can be turned back or turned off. And the reason mentioning no holds barred is because obviously once the competition has been decided, the world and everybody that's in it, our way of life as individuals and as citizens of the nations, our families, our jobs, the way we do business, the way we go to the store, the way we drive, conduct trade, whatever, our money, our education systems, our religion. You want me to keep going? I can keep going. Our cultures, and even our national identity, which we've all taken for granted, will have been completely, utterly radically altered forever, no one can nor will be exempted from the effects of this. No part of our lives will remain untouched. And the three-way affair, really, it is a three-way affair. If you look at it, it's some people say, well, it's just two ways, evil versus good or good versus evil, and that I agree. But in terms of a governmental issue or a global issue or an elite power broker issue, it does involve the Vatican, it involves the UK, it involves
all major power structures.
Well, yeah, but you've got some anchors there, Joe. I think. But having said that, I think if you're under the age of, I don't know, maybe 45, 50, I think there's a good chance that we're going to see the end result of all this. I don't know. I don't have a time thing, but look, what we're seeing really is the most profound and widespread modification of international, national, and local life the world has seen in millennia. And the competition that, well, I think we can call it the millennial endgame. Maybe that's a bad way to say it, I don't know. But bottom line here is we are standing right now in the face of the greatest historical confrontation of all time. It's really a test of what, the 2,000 plus years of culture and Christian civilization, perhaps, with all of its consequences for human dignity, our rights, and the rights of nations. No? Anyway, this is what we're talking about. So to talk about the retribution by the Speaker of the House, to me, is pretty anticlimactic, and it really doesn't matter, because remember, and those of you who have seen George Carlin or seen the YouTube of George Carlin, as profane as it might be to you, it's dead on accurate, isn't it? It's all one big club, and guess what? You ain't in it. This is why the educational system is not going to get fixed. The political system is not going to get fixed, because we have the ability to fix it, but it won't be. It's not going to be.
Yeah.
If you can stomach the profanity, you can find the 3-4 minute George Carlin clip on YouTube. Comedian that spoke the truth, was ahead of his time. Me, not a fan of his necessarily, but in that case, in that particular clip, he did speak the truth. Yeah, that's true. So, all right.
Let's go to the phones. 661-244-9839. We're going to go now to area code 267 first. 267. You're live on the Hagman and Hagman Report. 267.
I love the dead air. All right.
We'll come back to you. We'll go to 617. 617, you're live on the Hagman and Hagman Report. 617? All right.
All right. Maybe we're having a little glitch here. But, well, at any rate, wow. I just, hopefully, ladies and gentlemen, you did catch at the beginning of the program, and I got a couple of emails about this de Blasio, who he really is. I won't go through it again. Just understand that he's not who he says he is. He's Warren Wilhelm Jr. He's a red diaper baby. His parents were communists. He changed his name. He toured the cold. Well, yeah, I guess I am going through it. He was a very big supporter of the Marxist Sandinista government in Nicaragua back in the 80s. Of course, that government was backed by the Communist Soviet Union and by Cuba in 1983. While still a student at New York University, de Blasio toured the Soviet Union back in '83 again. Think about that. Who does that? And, of course, he married a lesbian activist, Charlene McRae, in 1994, and they took their honeymoon. Compliments of Uncle Fidel Castro at Communist Cuba. Go figure.
All right. Let's try the phones again. We're going to go to area code 678-678. We're coming to you now. You're live on the Hagman and Hagman Report.
Hey, Doug. Hey, Joe. How are you?
Good evening.
Can you hear me okay?
We can. Yes, we can. Fire away.
All right. Well, I kind of caught the tail end of your show, and just kind of listening to you talk about, people needing to kind of wake up and understand what's going on, and you were kind of talking about some of the satanic references to what's going on. And I'm wondering if you'd ever researched about Ted Gunderson and the work that he did and what you thought if it was legitimate.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Researching and to his legitimacy, I believe that to be very accurate, yeah.
Wasn't Ted Gunderson the one that had not as much as Joe has? Okay, we've gone on separate paths on this topic because it's such a it's a multi-headed topic here. Didn't Ted Gunderson make some sort of accusation against Art Bell at some point? And that I thought it was maybe this is the wrong person, wrong time, but I thought it was kind of a low below kind of thing. That was just my take at the time. I could be totally incorrect.
It's interesting because I remember, listening to the Art Bell show back in that time, and Robert Ghostwolf, I think, was involved in it, and listening to him. But I don't ever remember anything about Ted Gunderson back then. But there seemed to be information on both sides. That was an interesting point.
Okay, yeah, but any research that delves into this is going to have a pretty nasty kind of a collateral damage, kind of like a tripping at Claymore mine with an anti-personnel shrapnel in it. I mean, it's just going to go everywhere. And I find it interesting, too, that some of the so-called alternative journalists, and I'm referring to just one or two people in particular, brag about openly working with the directors that have close ties to people like Roman Polanski and others. Wow, it's just it really is a mess. So we have to be careful with which, to whom we listen and how we approach this subject. So it's all truthful, it all comes out, and it's all laid out in a very truthful and not a hysterical manner, but a very methodical manner, so we can be believed. So people, not so we can be believed, so people will listen to the facts as opposed to hyperbole.
Yeah, I agree, and it's interesting, that you put it that way, because for me, what it helped me recognize is that there is a true evil, and there are people that believe and follow Satan just as we follow Jesus. And so it goes back to that traditional battle of good versus evil. And it brings you to a point that you have nothing else but to believe in Jesus and to have faith, because there really is nothing else.
Well, you hit the nail right on the head with that, my friend. Absolutely. Absolutely. Anything else?
If you don't mind, I just wanted to kind of point out something interesting. The powers that be, if in fact what they are doing is by design, it's interesting how there's certain symbols and things that you can potentially recognize, And so I was just going to bring up something. Doesn't mean that it is anything, but it's a coincidence nonetheless. When we look at the various world wars that we've had, I'll try to make sure I get my information correct, but I believe the timeline from the start of World War I to World War II was 25 years. A lot of us kind of believe that we've entered a new World War in 2014, even though they say we're not at war. So the distance from World War II to World War III is 75 years, if I believe I'm correct. So 25 basically equals 1 into itself, into 75 is 3, is 13. The World War I believe, lasted for 4 years. World War II lasted for 6 years, which is 10. If we started World War III in 2014 and it were to last 3 years, that puts it at 2016, which could be in conjunction with an election possibly, or some type of one world government.
You know, that's very interesting. I mean, when you look at the New World Order timeline, I suppose is the best way to put this, and people will roll their eyes or have a tendency to do so. Mm-hmm. You know, you do bring apart or do bring to the table some interesting numerical aspects, and you know, go back to Albert Pike, his predictions, and people are free to dismiss this, but if we are to consider today whether what we're seeing unfolding will eventually become either part of or is the start of World War III, we need context. I think we need historical context. And if we look at what Albert Pike had written, in Pike, for those who don't know, listening, the 33rd degree Freemason occult grandfather who was privy to this grand plan to create a new world order, meaning a centralized dictatorship with a very small class of rulers, obviously. And if you take that, him, and don't forget William Guy Carr, for example, former intelligence officer in the Canadian Navy. He's written a couple of books. But yeah, I mean, the First World War, the timing of this, the countries involved, and for World War I going into World War II, and then the prediction or the suggestion by Pike for World War III, which would, So yeah, I mean, this is,
It doesn't. It's just interesting nonetheless. If they're as calculated and meticulous and diabolical as they are, then whatever ways we can learn to know our enemy.
You said that you're late to the program. If you have the time, I'd urge you to go back to the beginning of the program, because I did go through the run-up to 9/11 for a purpose, for the historical context, for the more than that, for the covert, luminous trademark signatures, occult signatures hidden in plain sight, and that goes back to Francis Bacon and others. But if you have the chance to do that, because that might even add to your thought process. All right, my friend. God bless, man. Appreciate it. Thanks for the call.
God bless. Thank you so much, guys. Bye-bye.
All right, man. Have a great night. All right, let's try and do this. Let's try and go back to 267 area code. Let's see if we can get this right this time. 267. No. And we'll give 617 one more try here. Area code 617, we're coming to you. You're live on the Hagman and Hagman Report.
All right. I got to tell you this. In 1985, I found this quote too in my research. Norman Cousins, the honorary chairman of Planetary Citizens for the World We Choose. How would you like to be a member of that organization? Planetary Citizens for the World We Choose. Now, he was quoted in Human Events magazine. And here's his quote back in 1985, Norman Cousins. And I quote, World government is coming. In fact, it is inevitable. No arguments for or against it can change that fact. Now, Cousins was also the president of the World Federalist Association, an affiliate of the World Association for World Federation, WWF, WAWF. Yes, everyone say that with me, WWF. Headquartered in Amsterdam, it is a leading force for centralization and is accredited by the United Nations as an NGO or non-governmental organization. So, oh my goodness. And we can go on from there. In 1987, the Secret Constitution and the Need for Constitutional Change, sponsored by the Rockefeller Foundation. Oh, you find them everywhere, right? Arthur S. Miller, he provided us some thoughts back in 1987 by saying that a pervasive system of thought control exists in the United States. Now, who'd have funked that, right? A pervasive system of thought control exists here in the United States. The citizenry is indoctrinated by employment of the mass media. Okay, so now there we've got the guy from the Rockefeller Foundation saying that the mass media, mainstream media, it's verified, they're part of this illusion, this thought control system, and the system of public education. Oh, surprise, surprise. Isn't that Gomer Pyle? All right, people are told what to think about. The old order is crumbling. The new coming out nationalism should be seen as a dangerous socialist disease, a dangerous social disease. A new vision is required to plan and manage the future, a global vision that will transcend national boundaries and eliminate the poison of nationalistic solutions. A new constitution is necessary. Oh my goodness, and don't forget Mikhail Gorbachev back in '88. Mikhail Gorbachev, folks, is not, his contribution to the unification push toward a one world government is just beyond comprehension almost. Mikhail Gorbachev calls for mutual consensus. He stated on December 7th, 1988, interesting date, world progress is only possible through a search for universal human consensus as we move forward to a new world order. And, Bush on George H.W. on May 12, 1989, invited the Soviets to join the world order. He was talking to a graduating class at Texas A&M University. He said that the U.S. is ready to welcome the Soviet Union back into the world order. Yeah, how's that working out for you, George H.W.? And, think back to, folks, what's a guy that's 90 years old doing parachuting, skydiving? Now, you might say to me, it's natural to want to do these things as you get older. That's fine. What did the so-called Queen do at the Olympic ceremony, 2012 Olympics? She fell to earth in a parachute with John D., right? George H.W. Bush, at his ripe old age of whatever, falling to earth, not once, not twice, but 3 times. Lastly, and I'll close with this, I'm a big fan of the M. Stanton Evans, his book about McCarthy, Senator McCarthy, where he was right all along. McCarthy was correct. Carl Bernstein of Woodward and Bernstein, the Watergate people, in their book Loyalties, A Son's Memoir, back in 1989 when it was published, let's see here, his father and mother had been members of the Communist Party. What is this? Seriously. Bernstein's father tells his son about the book, meaning Loyalties. You're going to prove Senator Joseph McCarthy was right, because all he was saying is that the system was loaded with communists. And it was. That's my interjection there. Back on track here. And he was right. I'm worried about the kind of book you're going to write and about cleaning up McCarthy. The problem is that everyone said he was a liar. You're saying he was right. I agree that the party was a force in the country, meaning referencing the Communist Party, which is the backbone to the New World Order. So all of you homosexuals out there, now listen carefully to me. This isn't hate speech. Mention homosexual and my inbox just fills up. All you homosexuals out there, how do you think you're going to be? You're having a great old time. In fact, on the sewage site, Democratic Underground, or no, it wasn't on that. It was on anyway, they're celebrating Florida as welcoming gay marriage. I mean, it's a big celebration. But see, y'all are going to be the first to go. You think that they're going to put up, the communists, the oppressive regime are going to put up with your abhorrent lifestyles? Of course not. They're sucking you in. They are. They're sucking you in. Man, oh man. People are just so, I don't know. Help me. I'm glad Steve Quayle's on. Steve, you listening? Call me. All right. Just kidding. Folks, don't send them an email. I'm just kidding. Okay.
There's an article from the New American. Human progress is accelerating, says Cato. The Cato Institute continues to update its human progress website with sources from around the world showing geographically the enormous progress human beings have made in every conceivable area of their lives, especially over the last 50 years. From communication to the environment, from housing to transportation, there's a data set that shows how far the human race has come in a very short period of time. Cato's primary purpose in continuing to develop its humanprogress.org website, already remarkably robust, is to dispel the common myth that things are getting worse and at an accelerating rate. Unfortunately, there is often a wide gap between reality and public perception of that reality, including the many policymakers, scholars, and intelligent laypersons. To make matters worse, the media emphasizes bad news while ignoring many positive long-term trends. We hope to correct these misconceptions. They go on to say, after all, the mainstream media bombards its audience with the ever-increasing and discouraging litany of disasters, both impending and pending, from wars to hunger, child labor, sex trafficking, and poverty. They go on to say that life expectancy, even though all this bad news is being talked about and constantly pumped down our throat, life expectancy across the world has improved astonishingly. This is one of their indicators that human progress is moving along and doing so at a successful rate. It goes on to say that the murder rate in medieval Europe was more than 30 times what it is today. It says that there is, between the internet, cell phones, falling prices for air travel are connecting more people than ever before, even the poorer countries. More children are attending school, the AIDS rate has fallen, and workers are working fewer hours and suffering fewer injuries. And
you would think that that's a good thing, right? But ultimately, it's being used to pervert and to convolute the good for the bad. I mean, it's all about consolidation. And once you've got choke points, that's what it's about. Choke points. You know, when Great Britain ruled over the world, they didn't have to control every planet. Just like you, where you sit right now, wherever you are listening to this program, wherever you're sitting right now, the authorities, in quotation marks, they don't have to surveil or control every square inch of land. They just have to control certain choke points, don't they? Perhaps you live in a I don't know, we'll say Buffalo, New York, and perhaps you live within the I-190 90 circle, the beltway, if you will, or any beltway. Isn't it true that all they have to do is close that ring down to control your comings and goings? Of course. And that's what we're seeing right now. It's all about choke points. The same thing that Great Britain did to control the world's commerce. They're doing now on a greater scale. It's all about consolidation, which gives them control. It's all about controlling choke points. And Beth from the UK listening live right now. It's going to be, I just want to say good morning. And boy, I'll tell you, you're either up late or up early. Yes, I did talk about the New York Mayor de Blasio, and she writes, in addition to that, the royal family, Queen Elizabeth II, of course, of the House of Windsor, not really of that family. They are descendants of the German arm of European royalty, the Saxe-Coburg-Gotha family. They changed their name to Windsor in 1914, and they are, in fact, very high-level players in the oligarchy that control the upper strata of the New World Order. And, of course, this is one of the reasons why Prince Andrew will not ever be touched, be spanked, or be sacrificed, because he's part of that royal bloodline. At least not now, unless it's expedient to their wishes for a new world order. All the leaders of all major industrial countries of the United States and England, Germany, all over the world, especially members of the G7, G8, whatever. Look, folks, they are active and fully cooperative participants in the conspiracy known as the New World Order. The degree of control exerted by this group, well, they've advanced to the point that only certain handpicked individuals who are groomed, carefully selected, they're the only ones eligible to become really the Prime Minister or President of the United States, which is why, in part, I believe you're going to see another Bush in the White House in 2016 if we have elections. And why not? Hey, why not have elections? Throw another Bush in there. Has anything really changed? Well, look at Obama. Has anything really changed under hope and change except more control? The noose tightening. That's enough. But, hey, look, if you are living a homosexual lifestyle, revel in the pleasures, carnal pleasures you have, and the legal pleasures you have right now, because the clock is ticking. And if you don't believe me, well, you don't have to believe me. In fact, don't believe me. Just go out and celebrate. Or repent.
According to Politico, take your money outside and toss it in the air and forget about it, because there's plenty more where that's coming from. But this article on human progress is really, half of it gets into some of the claims versus some of what they say are the increases of goodness we see today, but they take half the article and it's a direct shot at Michael Snyder, and they go on to say Michael Snyder has made a living out of harvesting the dark side of human nature. Writing for Economic Collapse blog for years, he continued to join the chorus of naysayers commenting on current affairs. He says that the economy is at a time of an unprecedented collapse, deep political corruption, accelerating social decay, out of control, rioting in the cities, and great disasters. A great storm is coming to America at a time that is quickly running out. And
we say a whirlwind is coming? A whirlwind?
They say, after shredding the supposed good news containing the latest announcement that the economy had grown at an annual rate of 5% in the third quarter, Snyder patronizes his audience by appealing to their dark side. Anyone with even a minimal amount of intelligence should be able to see the massive financial bubbles the central banks and of the world have created, and anyone with even a minimal amount of intelligence should be able to see that we are headed for a massive financial implosion, which will be extraordinarily painful. But they go on to minimalize and marginalize his claims, saying that all he is doing is trying to sell books through fear.
Hey, that's right. It's fear porn. Look, we're selling books. Send your money in. Yeah, send your money in. Go ahead. Go ahead. Oh man, you just the ridiculous lengths some of these people will go, of course. And it doesn't matter if you're a watchman. Look, Rick Wiles, it provides tremendous services of information. Steve, Tom Horn, everybody, and yeah, you put it in print form and you charge for it. My goodness, you just get are you vilified because you're profiting from fear? No, you're educating. You're helping prepare people. That's my response to anyone who does decide to email and complain more about that. Folks, thanks so much for listening. I shouldn't end on a low note like that. I didn't mean to. I just want to say this to each and every one of our listeners. Thank you so much. Thank you for all you do.
Absolutely.
Man, you are so. When I say for all you do, you might have sent an email that wasn't responded to, but I'll tell you, some of the emails really put a big smile on my face. You might have sent a card, a note, a letter, a bit of information. Thank you. Because it most likely changed my outlook. God bless each and every one of you. Till tomorrow. This is Doug signing off.